everyone, this is Brooke, DeFi analyst from TID Research.
So next, we can probably look at the lending sector. So within the sectors, Aave is still on top of the clear winner. So if we remove Aave from the chart for better comparison, the chart would look something like this. So you can see that actually out of all the lending protocols, Maple and Spark grew the fastest throughout 2025. Maple was first P2P private credit protocol where people can deposit, and then the protocol will conduct due diligence on the borrowers and then lend the deposits monies to the borrowers and therefore generate yields for the users. But later on, they wrap all this private credit loan as on the collateral and issue the yield-bearing stable Series USDC and Series USDT. And it proves to be a successful strategy because once they wrap it into a yield-bearing stable, it becomes very easy for users to build leverage position, to build loop on these stable coins. And these stable coins, yield-bearing stable coins, are very popular in the sense that the sources of yield is uncorrelated with the broad crypto market. So unlike, for example, Ethena SUSDE, which the staking yield is highly dependent on the funding rate, Series USDC and Series USDT APY is uncorrelated with the broad crypto market because the online yield is coming from the private credits, and these private credits, the APY is fixed. So even when the market is going down and the borrowing cost is dampened, the APY of the stable coins, Series USDC and USDT, tend to be very stable, and therefore it's like an all-weather yield-bearing vehicle where people can build loop and then be less worried about whether the borrowing cost will be higher than the actual APY they can get from holding the stable, because the stable yield is not affected by the broad market conditions. On top of that, because of its deep institutional background, for all those institutions who want to have a little bit of exposure to the on-chain market, they often choose Series DC or USDT as their partner. And for example, like Plasma, they're currently running several Series DC votes. And also for like Metas, they also work with different kind of curators to roll out Series DC votes to attract institutional investors. Throughout 2025, Maple experienced explosive growth. So their market shares from less than 2% at the very beginning to right now more than 10%. And that's pretty impressive. And the other outperformer is probably Spark. So Spark was first served only as asset allocator for the broader Sky ecosystem. However, early this year, they announced the Sky airdrop program at the near the end of Q1 and the beginning of Q2. So you can see that is when this market share surged from around 18% to right now around 30%. And even though after the TG was concluded, are still able to maintain the market share with their token buying back program and with their ongoing incentive program. So right now, they are not just a lending platform or asset allocator under the Sky ecosystem. Right now, they are also a more of a mature, independent lending protocols where the yields, even though not often as good, is often considered as the second best or even sometimes the best lending protocols for people to tap into the pool, tap into the lending capability, where the APY tend to be stable and the borrowing capacity is also oftentimes larger. So in comparison, 2025 was not a good year for ISO lending protocols such as like Euler or Morpho for a few reasons. First reason is that oftentimes for this protocol, they need to work very closely with the curator. On top of that, they also have relatively less control about what kind of asset these curators would like to list. So on one hand, it means that it gives curator more flexibility and also make the whole protocol more composable to, for example, support the launch of a given asset. However, on the other hand, it also make the Euler and Morpho somewhat vulnerable to the third-party risk. So like the event we saw throughout October and November in 2025, where there were a series of defaults from Stream Finance, Elixir, from Stable Labs, and actually a lot of curators choose to list their asset because they have like the BD deals with this kind of asset issuers, and they list their asset on Euler and Morpho to support the looping activity by the users. However, they often did not conduct thorough due diligence before listing the asset, and when all these assets went default, the TVO of Euler and Morpho dropped accordingly. So you can see that Euler and Morpho during November, their market share all dropped by quite a lot. And yep, so that's why Morpho and Euler market share did not grow significantly throughout 2025. The other interesting thing to look at is Fully. So Fully, for its lending sector, it's actually using a very similar strategy to build its lending market, similar as how it's building its function. That is not focusing on explosive growth. It's not focusing on all-purpose lending market. It's more focusing on becoming the best in a niche market. Just like DEX, for lending, Fully is also more focused on the correlated pairs. So you can see that even though Fully market share is not growing very fast, its market share is very well established and robust. And so it means that with the whole DeFi market growing, the size of the TVO for Fully lending is also growing, even though its market share is not growing by a lot. It is still growing, but only slowly. Oftentimes for correlated looping, the best rate market, even when compared with, for example, Spark or Aave. On top of that, Fully also have a partnership deal with Jupiter, where Jupiter Land is using Fully as an infrastructure. And with the Euler and Morpho getting more and more popular on Solana ecosystem, more and more users are doing the looping. Jupiter Land is also growing in TVO, and it looks like it's gaining traction, and that is also good for Fully.